In this lecture, we're going to go ahead and get started with creating our first asset in this course. So what we're going to do first is we're going to add a new layer. My document is 800 pixels by 450 pixels, if you're wondering. And what I'm going to do is on this new layer, I'm going to go ahead and create a horizon line. Now we're going to be creating a wooden crate, and that's why we need to create some perspective for this. Next, I'm going to create 2 points. So one here and one here. Then I'm going to decide where I want my middle line or the corner of my crate to be. So I'm going to place it about here. Then I'm going to go ahead and connect these points. Like so. Then we can go ahead and add our outer lines. So I'll add one right here. Oops. I'll add one right here. And then I'll also add one right here. Now these little lines that are sticking off, they're fine. We can go ahead and erase them. Next, let's go ahead and erase away all of these other lines that we don't want, like so. We can also just go ahead and enlarge the size of our brush. Get rid of all of this over here. Perfect. So now we have the shape of our crate. Next, what we want to do is we want to create the actual plank pattern that's going to be on the face of our crate. Next, what we want to do is we want to grab our shape tool over here. Remember when we use this to create our circle or use the ellipse tool? Well, this time we're going to use the rectangle tool, and we're going to create a perfect square. So I'm going to click and drag and hold down Shift to keep its proportions and to create a perfect square. Then we can go ahead and let go. Now let's go ahead and change our stroke to our black color. And then let's change the width of our line to 4 pixels. It's a little bit too thick, so let's change it to 3. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and flatten this layer by trying to erase it. So now we can go ahead and erase that because it's flattened. Then we're going to go ahead and copy this layer by hitting Ctrl-J on your keyboard or Command-J if you're on a Mac. Then using my transform tool, which if you remember is Ctrl-T on your keyboard or Command-T if you're on a Mac, we're going to go ahead and shrink this down like so. Then we're going to grab that and we're going to try to center it as best as possible. Now if you have Photoshop set up correctly, it should snap right into the center like so. Go ahead and hit Enter. Now if yours is not snapping right into the center, it's because you don't have your Snap To turned on. The way you turn that on is by coming up to View, then coming down to Snap To, and make sure that you have Guides, Layers, and Document Bounds selected. Next, we want to create the 2 crisscrossing planks that will crisscross on the face of our crate. So the way we're going to do that is by adding a new layer, then switching over to our brush tool, and then we're just going to guesstimate. So probably starting, if we come straight down from here, we can go ahead and make a dot or a point, then holding down Shift, we'll come over and coming straight over from that corner to there, we'll make a line, just like so. Let's do the same for the other side. So we'll come straight over like so, make a point, and then come straight over from this corner, like so. So now we have our first plank going across there. Now let's create the other diagonal plank. So we'll do the same thing, come straight down from there, hold down Shift, come straight over from there, and click. Do it once more for this side. Whoops. Perfect. Next, what we want to do is we want to erase away any of this area that's hanging over. So using my erase tool, I'll go ahead and erase that away. Then lastly, we want to erase away one of these 2 sets of lines. So one is going to be overlapping the other. So I'm going to choose this one. I'll just erase away those 2 lines. Perfect. So now we have the basic setup for the design of our crate. Next, what we want to do is we want to merge these 3 layers together. So I'm going to select them all by starting with the top layer, holding down Shift, then selecting the 3rd layer down, and that will select all of those. Then if I right click, I can come over to Merge Layers, And now all of those layers have become one. Next, let's go ahead and make a copy of this layer because we want to keep a flat version so that later we can come back to it and create the texture for our crate. But for now, we're just going to set up the mock-up drawing for our crate. So using this guy right here, we're going to go ahead and turn on the transform tool by hitting Control-T or Command-T if you're on a Mac. Then right-click and come to Distort. And just like we did with that circle, we're going to go ahead and drag these points to the corners of our crate. And now our crate pattern is in the correct perspective for our cube. Go ahead and hit OK. Then let's go ahead and do the same thing again. So we'll come back down to our original flat layer, and we'll go ahead and copy that layer. We can drag that over, turn on our transform tool, right-click, come down to Distort. Now we can go ahead and drag those to the corners of our cube. Perfect. Let's go ahead and hit Enter. Great. Now the last thing we want to do is we want to add some dimension to these crisscrossing planks. So right now this all looks pretty flat. The way we're going to add that dimension is by using our brush tool and bringing down the size all the way, and then we're going to add a new layer above these. Then we're going to click here, then go straight across like so. We'll do the same here, go straight across like so. And then all we have to do is use our erase tool to erase away any area that went over our board. But now you see that adds a new dimension to these planks. Let's do the same for this other side. So we're going to have a straight line going up right there. And then we're also going to see a little bit of this top surface like so, and a little bit of this bottom surface like so. Perfect. Now we want to do the same for the other side. So we'll click here, come down, and we'll click here, come up. Then we can go ahead and erase away any area that went over our planks. Then we'll go ahead and finish up by getting this side. And then we'll get this top edge and this bottom edge also. Great. Let's go ahead and zoom out and see how that looks. Perfect. So now we have the mock-up drawing for our crate. In the next lecture, we're going to go ahead and create some wood texture for this flat design over here. And then we're going to apply that to our actual crate over here. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you. Now, this is going to be a very simple texture to create. And after we create this texture and apply it to our drawing, we're going to go ahead and get into more advanced texture creation, and we'll apply that to our crate also. So you're going to get a taste for two different styles of texture in this section of the course. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The first thing we want to do is we want to create a new document. So I have a new document here that's 800 pixels by 800 pixels. And the first thing we want to do is add a new layer. Then using my marquee tool, I'm going to go ahead and create a rectangle, like so. Now what this rectangle is for is we are going to create the individual planks that are going to make up our wooden crate. So the first thing we want to do is we want to select our color. So I'm going to come to my color picker, then I'll come into my purples, and I'm going to come down to about there, and we want it to be pretty desaturated. Go ahead and hit OK. This is going to be our shadow color, and shadow colors tend to be desaturated. So let's go ahead and fill that rectangle in. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my highlight color. So my highlight color is going to be sort of an orange color. This is also going to be pretty desaturated, but not as desaturated as my purple. So about there should be good. Then let's go ahead and create a new layer and fill this in with our orange color. And then we can go ahead and use our transform tool to shrink that down. Remember to hold down shift to keep its proportions. And in this case, we actually don't want to keep the proportions. We want it to become a little bit skinnier. Otherwise, we're not going to keep the same distance between the edges on the top and the side. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Then we'll use the arrow keys on our keyboard to nudge that into place. And what we're looking for is we're trying to get it into the center. Great. Now you may be wondering why we're using sort of this orangish pinkish color and this purple to create a wooden crate. Well, a lot of the times it's a lot more interesting to use colors that are a little bit different than what you would normally see. Also, the reason for the outline on our wood, which is going to be shadow, the reason why it's going to be purple is because, like we said before, we want our shadows to be cool colors. And the more vibrant and exaggerated they are, the more interesting your artwork is going to look. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to merge these two layers together. And then we're going to copy this layer. So now we have two. Next, let's go ahead and create a wood texture. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to select a black. Then using my brush tool, I'm going to go ahead and start painting in some wood grain on a new layer, like so. Now, if you don't know what wood grain looks like or you're having a hard time envisioning it, go ahead and do a Google search for wood grain and use that as a reference. It's very important to use reference when you're creating artwork. All the greatest artists use reference. So just remember, whenever you're in doubt, go ahead and look at some reference. For the most part, wood grain is going to be very random looking. So do not worry about it being perfect by any means. Great. Now let's do the same for the other side. Now we're going to be reusing these, and I think this knot right here, or this eye, it's going to be way too prominent and recognizable when we reuse this plank of wood. So I'm going to redo this area right here. So just taking my erase tool, go ahead and erase that. And I'll just go ahead and brush in something a little bit less noticeable. Like so. Great. Now, I know this isn't looking very good, but we're going to do something to it here in a second that's going to make it look amazing. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and merge these two planks of wood together. So now those are one. And then we want to go ahead and select the shape on our layer by holding down Control, or if you're on a Mac, you're going to hit Command, and then clicking your thumbnail on the layer. And now you see we get this dotted line going around our shapes. What we're going to do now is we're going to invert the selection. So at the moment we have selected the inside of these planks. We want to select this outside area. So we're going to hold down Control-Shift-I, and now you can see that just swapped it to this outside white area. You can tell because there's a dotted line around the outside of your document. And if you're on a Mac, it's going to be Command-Shift-I. And the reason why we wanted to flip this is because we want to delete this black area that's sticking off the edges of our planks. So now if we go ahead and switch up to our top layer, which has our wood grain on it, we can go ahead and hit delete, and that will get rid of all of that. Great. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to copy this layer. So we'll go Control J, and then we're going to bring up our hue and saturation panel by hitting Control U, or Command U if you're on a Mac. And now what we can do is we can change the saturation, the lightness, and the hue of our layer. What we want to do is we want to change our black to white. Then we'll go ahead and hit OK. So we still have our black one underneath. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our black and we're going to nudge it over 1 pixel, like so. Then we're going to take our white and nudge it over 1 pixel, in the opposite direction. Next, we're going to go ahead and take our white layer and drag it underneath the black layer. This way it gives us more of a crack canyon sort of effect. Next, let's go ahead and merge these two layers together. And then we have a little bit sticking off the edges because we nudged them over. So what we want to do now is we want to select our shape once more for our planks. Invert that selection by hitting Control-Shift-I or Command-Shift-I if you're on a Mac. Then we'll go ahead and hit delete. And you couldn't really see it because it's being covered up by the dotted lines, but that just took care of the little bit that was sticking off the edges. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to change our blend mode from normal to overlay. And then we're going to bring our opacity down to about 62%. Great. So now we have our two wooden planks. Next, what we want to do is we want to start moving these into our document. So first, let's merge both these layers together so that it's easier to bring these over into our other document. Next, I'm going to go ahead and select one of these with my marquee tool. Then I'm going to copy it by hitting Control-C on my keyboard, or if you're on a Mac, it's going to be Command-C. Then we're going to come back into our drawing file, and let's go ahead and paste that in by hitting Control-V or Command-V. Then we're going to use our transform tool to shrink that down. And the first thing we want to do is we want to make this back part of our wooden crate. So this area in these triangles is going to be the back part where we have slats of our boards going across. Now our light source is going to be coming from the top. So we want to make sure that we have this highlight edge on our wood grain on this side. If it's on the other side, it's going to look like the light source is coming from the bottom. So let's go ahead and put that into place. Then we're going to hold down Shift and shrink it down. We hold down Shift to keep its proportions. Then once we get it to the right spot and size, we'll go ahead and hit Enter. And then let's do the same thing again with our other wooden plank. So using my marquee tool, I'll go ahead and select that, copy it, and paste it. Now we can go ahead and shrink that down. So we'll turn on our transform tool and do like we did before with our other plank. Let's rotate it. Make sure that you have your highlight on the bottom side of your grain. Get it lined up. And remember to hold down Shift as you shrink it to keep its proportions. Then once we get it into place, we'll go ahead and hit Enter. And then let's go ahead and merge these two layers together. Now I'm noticing that the crack between each one of these boards is not dark enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and zoom in there. Then I'm going to select this purple and I'm going to grab a really dark version of it. So somewhere down here should be good. Then switching over to my brush tool, and I'm making sure that I'm on my pencil tool right here. And then shrinking my brush size down to 1 pixel, I'm going to click there and then hold down Shift and come straight across like so. Now I'm going to do this once more just to darken it a little bit more. And then I'll do the same thing for the bottom side here. So I'll click, drag across, click, and drag across. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and copy these two by selecting them, copying them, and then we're going to drag it up like so. And then we need one more up here, so I'll just go ahead and copy another one in. Then I'm going to bring down the opacity on this layer up here where it says opacity, so I'll bring that down to about 48%. Doesn't really matter. We just want to see the drawing behind it so we know where to cut this off at, which will be right there. So we'll hit delete. Then we can bring the opacity back up on that layer. Great. Now let's go ahead and merge all these layers together. So I'm going to select them all and merge them. So now that's one layer. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and copy this layer, and then we're going to drag the copy over like so. So now we just want to apply this to our box, just like we did before with our drawing. So we're going to turn on our transform tool, right click, and come to distort. And then we're just going to drag each one of these corners into the corners of our drawing, like so. And so now our texture has conformed to the correct perspective. Let's go ahead and hit Enter. Let's go ahead and do this for our other surface. So we're going to come back down to this layer and we'll go ahead and copy it. And we'll drag that copy over and we'll line it up. Then use the transform tool and distort. We'll bring that up to that corner. Just get everything into the correct position. Perfect. Let's go ahead and hit enter. Now let's go ahead and grab this layer right here that has our drawing on it. We're going to drag that underneath all these so we can see what's going on. All right, this is looking pretty good. In the next lecture, we're going to go ahead and create the outside frame and the crisscrossing planks, and then we're going to add a little bit of dimension to those, and then we'll also add some light and shadow to our crate to make it look a lot more realistic. Thanks for watching this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.